Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Story County Democrats Soup Supper. What a great turnout we have tonight on this cold and icy and snowy evening. Thank you all for coming out. I am your MC tonight, Supervisor Lisa Heddens. That's still a term I'm getting used to saying as supervisor, but all is going well at the county level. So I am so pleased, as I said, with the turnout that we have tonight. This is an important year for us with the presidential election in November. We have so much at stake, and looking at what our current president has done to cut down our military, our intelligence community, who mocks people who do not agree with him, and who has become the joke of world leaders. So we certainly need a president who can come in and put us back on the path of respect, on the path of moving forward with our country versus the continually stepping back that we are currently have been under. So I am excited that we have so many folks here this evening, whether it's the candidate themselves or someone as a surrogate for all the candidates to be here. So with that, I am going to get started. And our first speaker this evening is John Delaney. So please give a warm welcome to John Delaney. He's running on up.
I've been to 1,000 Democratic events. This is the first one to start on time. So. I was talking to JD in the background. I think, there'll be a few more minutes. Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening. What a great turnout. So we were driving all around the state today. And I have to say, it was pretty darn windy out there. Our RV kind of was like a sail getting a little caught and pushed over to the side. So it's impressive how many people came out and endured the weather and, to support the fact that we are actually all in this together. That's the one thing we have to remember. I know there's a lot of choices that everyone's going to make coming up, and there's a lot of different messages going out there, but we're all in this together. And the fact that so many people come out and support the Democratic Party is such an inspiring and comforting thing for me to see. And I want to thank you all for all the support you're giving JD, because he's going to be a great member of Congress, and you'll be very proud of him and how he's going to fight for you, and you're going to be very proud of him when he defeats the worst member of Congress. And he's not only the worst member of Congress because he's so indecent and he doesn't represent the values that I've come to learn Iowa stands for, but he's also, almost by definition, the least effective member of Congress because he's not on any committees. So he's not really in a position to do his job, and that's a point you got to make when you get out there and work for JD. I'm sure JD will make that point a couple of times. But it's a really important point, but you're really lucky to have someone fighting for you who's going to stand so strongly for all the things you believe. So it is great that we're getting down into the final phases of this election, because to some extent it clarifies for not only the voters, but for us candidates, what's most important about why we're doing this. And that, to me, is in many ways the question that I think voters should be asking of all candidates, which is, why are you doing this? So I remember my journey to public service, which really started for me about 10 years ago. I was running my business. I grew up in a blue-collar family. I was the first in my family to go to college, and I was an entrepreneur, and I started a successful business. We had a couple thousand employees. But I'd always thought of my life as a third learning, a third earning, and then a third serving. I know it sounds corny, and I know it sounds simple, but that's how I thought about things. And about 10 years ago, I really wanted to get into public service, but I was running my business, and I was sitting down with my amazing wife, April. We've been happily married for 31 years. We have 4 daughters. And I was saying to April, I'd really like to do this. There's a seat that's going to be open. There's a Republican that's held this seat for 20 years, and, I think I can beat him. But I'm not sure because our life right now is pretty comfortable and all this stuff. And she looked at me and she said 4 words. She said, "It's not about you. It's not about you." And we talked about it, and it's about a sense of stewardship. It isn't about any of us. It's about what we can do for the common good. And that's really why we all should be serving at the end of the day. And that's really why you come out on a cold and snowy and windy night, because you care about the common good. Those of us who have the privilege to actually spend time helping other people, we realize it's about stewardship. The fact that some of us have been blessed and can do things in our life, that's such an amazing privilege. Because at the end of the day, it's not about us. We're going to celebrate the great Dr. King in 2 days. And one of his most famous speeches, he said, "The arc of the moral universe bends towards justice." And I believe he's right about that. And the facts certainly support his insight. If you look what's happened across the world and in our country in the last 50 years, we have made extraordinary progress. And we have to remember that. In the last 3 or 4 decades, billions of human beings have been lifted out of poverty. Literally billions of human beings. If that's not the hand of God, I don't know what is. Children that used to be born with conditions where they had no chance can now live full and productive and meaningful lives. Diseases that used to be terminal are now can be chronic or cured. We have devices in our hands that allow us to connect with people all over the world and open up societies. The rate of child labor around the world, it's a tragedy that we still have it, has fallen dramatically. Life expectancies around the world has been extended. The condition of humankind has in fact improved. And we don't say that enough, but it's true. And it's important to acknowledge that, because unless we acknowledge the progress that we've made, we can't learn from how we did it. But we made this progress with good-minded people, not only fighting, not only putting it all on the line and emptying the gas tank for the things that they cared about, so that when one day they see their maker or St. Peter, whoever it is, they can show them their scars, as they say. But we did this because people actually worked and fought for the common good. And if you actually want to work and fight for the common good, you can't be a one-issue voter. I say this to my friends all the time of faith, because my wife and I have a very strong faith. I say you can't be a one-issue voter and actually work for the common good. You can't be a special interest voter and work for the common good. You can't be someone who puts forth things that can never happen and work for the common good, because the arc of the moral universe does in fact bend towards justice, but it doesn't bend on its own. It bends because good-minded people work hard and they fight, but they also work to accomplish things. And they don't come to the table thinking about their own self-interest. Right? They don't come to this debate thinking it's about them. They realize, as my wife told me when I was making this decision to run for Congress, it's not about you. It's about all of us. And that's what I think we have to remember. Because we are the party that fundamentally at our core fights for the common good. And that's what the country needs to understand. Because if the country understands that, we're going to win every election. And we'll be able to govern. And it's so obvious if we're actually fighting for the common good, what we need to do today. You look at what's happened to the condition of our country. The pressure so many working families are under. The tragedy of the uninsured. We obviously need to build a universal healthcare system in this country where every American has healthcare as a basic human right. That is the obvious, civilized next step that we need to do as a society. We obviously need to do things that are to help struggling workers. We live in a country right now where 40% of our citizens can't afford their basic necessity. 42% of Iowans can't afford their basic necessities. Where half of our country, if confronted with a surprise $500 expense, can't afford it. We obviously need to be supporting workers and giving them more tax credits and child tax credits and raising the minimum wage and ensuring that they have a living wage so that if they work one job for 40 hours a week, they can support their family and they don't need 2 to 3 jobs. That's if you're fighting for the common good. We obviously need to do things to improve our public education system. We've got a situation where 70% of high school graduates were not deemed eligible for the military last year. Think about that. 7 out of 10 high school graduates were deemed not to have the educational skills or to have social and emotional deficiencies that put them in a position where they weren't eligible for the military. Clearly, we have a crisis. But one of the things we also need to do, and you know this here in Iowa, and it's incredibly important that this voice gets out. We have to fight for all the small towns that have been left behind. And that's the one thing I've taken from my 2 years in your state, having been to all 99 of your counties and done over 500 events in coffee shops and in people's living rooms. So many small towns are struggling. This is something that JD talks about all the time. The fact that small town after small town, they're shrinking and aging, and it's putting enormous pressure on their public health system and their school system. And there's no opportunities for young people. We have a crisis in small town America. You know, since 1990, our country has grown by 75 million people, yet rural America has shrunk by 3 million. Counties with over 1 million people in them, the big counties of this country, they've created 100,000 new businesses in the last 5 years. Yet at the same time, small counties, counties with less than 100,000 people, have lost 20,000 businesses. Last year in our country, 80% of the investment in new companies, you know, in entrepreneurs starting businesses and creating jobs and creating economic opportunity in this country, 80% of that went to 50 counties in this country. There are almost 3,100 counties in this country. Right? Rural America and small town America is being drained of opportunity. It's not connected to the modern economy. And not only are the citizens in those communities being hurt, but it is destabilizing our democracy. The premise of the democracy of the United States of America is that we'd have broad-based economic opportunity. The U.S. Senate, a big state like California, has 2 senators, as does a small state. Unless the small rural states are working, we're never going to have a stable democracy. And this is something that I believe Iowa needs to send a message in this next election, that these issues matter, that it needs to be part of who we are as Democrats. One of the reasons I've always been proud to be a Democrat, ever since I grew up in a union family, and my dad would tell me, if you care about workers, you vote for the Democrat, is because the Democrats fight for the person left behind and the most vulnerable. We define the common good not by how the top is doing, but how those who are most struggling are doing. And right now, the situation in small town and rural America calls us to that fight as much as anything. So the one thing I ask you, Iowa, as we get down to these final weeks, you should send a message that these issues matter, that the issues that are affecting small town America are important, because you're in a unique position to send that message, because you represent a state that understands these issues. And this is something I'm committed to. Because if we're going to ever have a country that really works, and if we're ever going to create the progress that we need to create for the common good, we need to win everywhere, not just on the coasts. And we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually win communities that we haven't won in a long time because of this president's policies. So I ask you, as we get close to the caucus, make sure you focus on the issues that matter these communities in your state that you understand so well. Make sure that's part of what we're fighting for as Democrats, because they need you to send that message. And the Democratic Party needs to get it. Because if we do that, we're going to win every election. And then we can start accomplishing these big goals that are so important to all of us. Because at the end of the day, again, it's not about me. It's not about any of us individually. It's about what we can do to serve the common good. And that's why I'm running for president. So I want to thank you for having me. I want to congratulate you on this great turnout. I want to thank you for all the support of the terrific candidates you're going to hear tonight. And God bless you, Iowa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming this evening, weathering the storm that's been out there, and getting your message out. Since it is winter time and I am the MC, I'm going to ask you a little joke here. What often falls in winter but never gets hurt? Snow. I know. I wait for that. What do snowmen eat for breakfast? Frosted snowflakes. So our next speaker is, we have, thank you for that laugh, we have, trying to be entertaining here, we have Senator Herman Quirmbach, who is going to be speaking on behalf of the Biden campaign.
Well, good evening, and thank you all for turning out on such a wintry night. It's just amazing the amount of energy and commitment in this Democratic Party, and we're going to need all of it this next year. I am supporting Joe Biden for president. I did that back in '08, and he didn't quite make it then, but I think he's going to make it this time. Let's start by talking about the things that we agree on. I think we all agree that Donald Trump has to go. And if Joni Ernst and Moscow Mitch and the other Republican sycophants aren't going to do their duty this next month, then we're going to have to get it done next November, and we're going to do that. We're going to work our hearts out, we're going to work our butts off and everything in between. We're going to put it on the line for the Democratic candidate, whoever it might be. Let's agree on something else. We have a whole lot of very talented Democratic candidates for president this year. I watched the debate the other night. I saw nothing but quality up there. Every last one of them did a terrific job, and there were a bunch of them that didn't make it to the platform who also would have done a terrific job. We have a wealth of candidates, and they have a candidate of wealth. We have an embarrassment of riches, and they have an embarrassment. All right? So whoever gets the nomination, we're going to come together, we're going to unite, we're going to get behind them, and we're going to win next November. Here are a couple other things that we agree on. We agree basically on a whole lot of issues. We believe that health care is a right, not a privilege. We believe that climate change is real and that humans have a lot to do with it, and humans better get their act together to clean it up, otherwise we're going to singe this planet in very short order. We got to get that done. There are a whole lot of other issues that we agree on. Basic human rights we agree on. Respect we agree on. We may differ on some of the details about how to go about that, about how to address health care or climate change. But one thing is true, if we don't win next November, we're not going to get an opportunity to make any progress on that. Now, here is something, though, that for me is even more basic. And Joe Biden put his finger on it in his recent messaging. It's the soul of America that's at stake this time. It is who we are as a people. A pluribus unum. Out of many come one. We have to go back to work at uniting ourselves as a people, as a nation, as a spirit. Because a lot of destruction has been done. We have a president who has come to power not by uniting people, but by dividing people. Not by finding common values, but by emphasizing and exaggerating and exacerbating division. whether it's black versus white, native-born or immigrant, rich versus poor. He has used every means at his disposal to divide us, to alienate us, to make people angry, to tell people who's to blame, but not to find solutions. And we need to find solutions. We need to reunite ourselves as a people. We need to reunite ourselves in dignity and respect. And if you've heard Joe Biden speak at all, and some of you were here, what was it, 13, 14 years ago, when he was the main speaker here in this room for this event. If you've heard him speak at all, you know that dignity is pretty much Joe Biden's favorite word. He wants to reestablish dignity in the office of the President of the United States. He wants to establish dignity in the processes of the U.S. government. He wants to establish dignity and respect in how we treat each other. Whether you just came across the Rio Grande, or whether your forebears came on the Mayflower, or whether your forebears were here to welcome the Mayflower. Okay? We need to treat everybody with dignity and respect. Now, our MC tonight is scrupulously neutral, as of course she needs to be. Lisa Heddens is always proper in handling these kinds of events. But I got a sneaking suspicion I know who Paul Heddens is going to vote for. And Paul, you all know Paul Heddens. He's been at every campaign event I think that Lisa's ever had. He's old enough to vote now. And he's going to be voting for his friend Joe Biden. And I'm not using the term friend euphemistically. They know each other. They have been exchanging correspondence and phone calls for at least a dozen years. Because that's the kind of person that Joe Biden is. He reaches out to ordinary people. He reaches out to people with disabilities. He reaches out to people who are working folks. He reaches out to farmers. He reaches out to those in poverty, those at the beginning of life and those at the end of life. Because that's the kind of guy he is. That's the kind of background he comes from. He understands ordinary Americans, and he can speak to our best interests, to the better angels of our nature. He's the guy who can get this done. He has a wealth of experience, many years of experience in the Congress, and he knows how the Congress works, and he knows how to get things done in Congress. The assault weapons ban, the bill against the Violence Against Women Act, a whole host of other legislation that he has helped to get through the Congress, the Affordable Care Act, the Recovery Act back in the depths of the Great Bush Recession, when the state government was, God, we were so hurting for money. We got a couple $100 million from the federal government that helped keep our schools operating and our universities operating. Joe Biden knows how to get that done. Joe Biden knows how to do foreign policy, because he's been doing that for a long time as well. All right? He was in there with John Kerry in negotiating the Iran nuclear deal. He was involved with the Paris climate change agreement. All of these other agreements that we have walked away from, that we have, by abandoning them, have endangered the peace of the world, the peace of the Middle East, the climate future of the country. Joe Biden knows how to turn things around. He can win the respect of foreign leaders. You know, when those European leaders were at that last gathering, when they were laughing at Donald Trump, they were also laughing at us. We need somebody who can turn that around, who can restore respect for the United States. We can't be the world's policeman, we know that. But the United States leadership is crucial to peace, to climate security, to respect across the world. And Joe Biden can get that done. So look, I know there are a lot of candidates. I know that Iowans are typically waiting to the last minute to make their decisions. It's part of our duty. I talk to other people in other states, and they say, oh, you guys get so spoiled, you always go first. And I tell them, you have no idea how hard we have to work to earn that position. And we earn it every time around, just as you have done by being involved, just as you have done by being here tonight. So thank you for showing up. please consider Joe Biden. I think that he will get the nomination, and I think that he will win in November. We need to get that done. Thank you.
Thank you, Herman. Appreciate your words this evening, as we appreciate all of the candidates and their surrogates that are here this evening. All right, so where do snowmen keep their money?
Snowbank.
In a snowbank. Yeah, some of you got it, Yeah. Okay, how about this one? How does a penguin build a house? It glues it together. All right, please give a warm welcome to our next speaker. We have Representative Deb Haaland here on behalf of the Warren for President candidacy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that. Events like this don't just happen. It takes a lot of work and volunteer work, and I know that because I'm a grassroots organizer. So thank you all for making this happen. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm so happy to be here in Story County, Iowa with all of you, but more importantly, raising funds for the county party so that you can help your candidates to win. Your role is always so important. It happens at the grassroots, and I am so grateful for every single one of you. Thank you to Chairwoman Maddie Anderson for stepping up to lead. And as a former state party chair, which I am from New Mexico, I understand the challenges that you face. And of course, how important your leadership is. So thank you very much for that as well. Thank you to all of you for your activism, for pushing Ted Rasmussen across the finish line, and for not stopping after that. There are voters everywhere who are waiting for your calls, who are waiting to be inspired by your message of hope for our future, and Elizabeth Warren believes that as much as each one of us does. As I mentioned, I'm a grassroots organizer. I started out in politics as a phone volunteer, and now I'm a member of Congress. Thank you. I am living proof that hard work and persistence still means something in our country and in our politics, because I don't come from wealth and power or privilege, but I built a coalition from the ground up that was strong, and we won. Thank you. I'm the daughter of veterans. My dad, God rest his soul, was a 30-year U.S. Marine who spent 2 whole years in Vietnam and won the Silver Star Medal for saving the lives of 6 Marines. At 18, my mom joined the Navy, and back then, if you got pregnant, you were barred from service. So her military career was cut short. I have a sneaking suspicion she would have sort of outlasted my dad somehow. But she was a dedicated wife, military wife and mother, and I know my father would never have had the career he did without her. In 1881, my father's grandparents immigrated to the United States from Norway and first settled in Sioux City, Iowa. Go figure. I have a picture of them, and the photographer is from Sioux City, Iowa. They first sent their brother out. My great-grandparents sent their brother, Joseph, I believe his name was. They sent him out. They sent him to the U.S. to sort of report back on what it was like and whether they should come or not. And he wrote letters home saying that he had found a home with the Indians right here in Iowa, and even sent some pictures of him with the Indians. I feel that's kind of a foreshadowing into my parents' relationship, I think. But the family eventually followed him here to a country full of promise, even for Norwegian farmers. On my mother's side, I'm a 35th generation New Mexican. The Pueblo Indians migrated to the Rio Grande Valley in New Mexico in the late 1200s from places like Chaco Canyon, Bears Ears, Grand Staircase Escalante, and Mesa Verde, which is one reason why in Congress I fight very hard to protect our public lands. Our agricultural traditions, sacred sites, environment, self-determination, justice systems, those are all on the line with this administration, and Elizabeth Warren understands that too. I'm here this evening to tell you that I absolutely believe in Senator Warren. I know she can win, and I'm in full support of the plan she is laying to regain what we have lost as a country during this reckless administration. Senator Warren has been on the front lines fighting for working families since before she was elected to office. Recall that almost 9 years ago, she started a whole new consumer bureau passed into law in the fierce opposition of powerful financial industry that spent millions to stop that agency in its tracks. Since then, the agency that she started has returned over $12 billion to consumers who were cheated out of their hard-earned money by the rich and powerful. Elizabeth is no stranger to Story County. She's been here 3 times. She's endorsed by former Senator Charlie Bruner and also by Dave Swenson. The Warren Campaign Office has been here in Ames since May of last year. We have a strong ISU for Warren chapter, and we've inspired a good many volunteers. And now, one of the first Native American women ever elected to Congress in our country's history is also here in Story. Elizabeth grew up on the ragged edge of the middle class in Oklahoma. She has personal experiences with the challenges that working people like my family and yours face. Her dad was a janitor, and all 3 of her brothers served our country in the military. She has spent her career understanding why life is so hard for us and has been fighting for the changes that will even the playing field for people like you and me. Elizabeth is a strong Democrat and has supported our party by making real investments in states across the country. She invested in me and in many candidates who won in 2018 when we flipped our U.S. House and created the most diverse Congress in the history of our country. And imagine where we'd be right now if that hadn't happened. She wouldn't be caught up in an impeachment, I can tell you that. Some of the ways Elizabeth Warren will right our country are through a 2-cent tax on fortunes over $50 million. This would allow us to provide universal, affordable child care and preschool, cancel student loan debt, which I have a personal interest in, I can tell you that too, and that the student loan would positively affect 43 million Americans. It would provide tuition-free public college, including community college, and reinvest in our public schools. Elizabeth wants to get big, dark money out of our government. Her anti-corruption bill would reverse Citizens United and protect voting rights for every single voter in every single state. This coming Tuesday is the anniversary of Roe versus Wade, which made abortion legal in our country. Elizabeth is a champion for women's reproductive rights. Our bodies are not a discussion for lawmakers, right? Thank you. Women have complete say, and Elizabeth will always honor and protect a woman's right to choose. And if I could just say for a moment, Republican women right now are only towing the line. They're not on the side of women. Senator Ernst has made the decision to gut the Violence Against Women Act, to remove the ability of Indian tribes to manage their own justice systems, and the governor here wants to violate the sacred trust that women have with our own bodies. But we are here to stand up and resist. These reasons and so many more are why I endorsed Elizabeth Warren way back in July of last year, and why I'm proud to be a national co-chair of this campaign. This campaign All the staff and all the volunteers make for an incredibly strong organizing team, which will lay the groundwork for activating Democrats in every single state. Yesterday, while driving across Iowa, across this winter wonderland, with snow just blowing across the highway where you couldn't see, luckily I wasn't driving, I made many calls to voters who were yet undecided. Most all of these voters align completely with Elizabeth on all the issues I just talked about. The last 3 years have prompted fear in many Americans. Children in cages, parents unable to afford insulin for their sick children, people getting kicked off food stamps, and the deadly effects of climate change to the Americans who can least afford it. And that fear is understandably prevalent in decisions that we must make now. But hear this, fear will not kick out the current occupant from the White House. Only hope, courage, hard work, and persistence will do that. Yes. And what I can offer you today is that I won in 2018 and now serve along with an historic number of women in Congress. We all won our primaries, and some of them were extremely tough. And then we won our general elections, and some of those were tough too, because a lot of the candidates who won in Trump districts. In fact, right here in Iowa, you elected 2 amazing women who I am proud to call colleagues of mine, Cindy Axne and Abby Finkenauer. Yes, give them a hand. I'm going to help them. I'm going to make sure they get reelected. But no one can tell me that Iowa doesn't support women candidates, because I know you do. You've proved that already. I'm asking you today to join me and millions of Americans in supporting Elizabeth Warren, because she works hard. She has the intellect, the plans, the love, and compassion for the job, and I know that every single day she wakes up ready to fight for the working families in this country. Across Iowa, Elizabeth and I are ready to help Democrats win. I am committed to Abby and Cindy, and I'm also very excited to do all I can do to help JD Scholten win his election and be the true voice of District 4 here in Iowa. Yes. For those of you for those of you in the room who are already with us, thank you. To those of you who are ready to be with us, thank you too. We are only as strong as the volunteers who power us, and we need your help now. To get involved with our campaign in the final 16 days, if you can believe that, you can text GOTC to 24477. That's GOTC to 24477. Or you could actually just talk to one of the volunteer organizers in the room. Raise your hands if you want to talk to some folks about Elizabeth Warren's campaign. There you go. And the last thing I'll say is dream big and fight hard. Thank you all so much.
Representative Haaland, thank you so much for coming out today, coming up to Ames. We appreciate hearing your words. So I'm going to spare you with the joke for this round. And I'm going to move on to our next speaker. I believe Randy Bryce is here. And Randy is speaking on behalf of the Sanders for President campaign. Please give a welcome for Randy.
Good evening, everybody. How are we doing? You ready to win it? 16 days away. I have milk that's going to expire after. It's really a privilege and an honor to be here on behalf of Senator Bernie Sanders, who I'm voting for as our next organizer-in-chief. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm born and raised in southeastern Wisconsin, and was in a district that was represented by Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House. Yeah, that's music to my ears. You all know who he is. Anyways, some people call me crazy for taking it up, but the construction worker, proud union worker, who decided to take him on and prove that the common man does have a voice, and we can chase away the third most powerful Republican in the country when we put our voices together. I'm looking at this upcoming 2020 in November, not just as an election, but as part of a movement. And now I'm going to let you know about how I came to know Senator Sanders. In 2011, Wisconsin elected a person as governor by the name of Scott Walker. I knew you knew him too. Anyways, one of the first things he did once he was elected was to, and these are his words, drop the bomb on public sector workers. Now, having been in a private sector union myself, we weren't going to be affected by this. But I knew it was just a matter of time, because once you go after one group, everybody gets a place in line. Until you next one up, off with your head, you're done. And so I tried rallying workers together. We had a first event, we had 250 people show up in Horicon, Wisconsin. And this was after I pulled up on my driveway. It was a cold day, pretty similar to what we have going on outside here. But it was a cold day, and I got a phone call. It was like, Scott Walker is going to be doing this. It was somebody from our international. And we don't know what we're going to do, but we have to do something. So we decided to have a rally. 250 people showed up. And we grew that into something else. I don't know if you have put on your TV, but we built it up to 150,000 people doing laps in Madison, Wisconsin, speaking up against this injustice, this attack on workers. Because Wisconsin was the place where public sector workers were born. Now, we were looking for help. We were trying to raise our voice together, because that's what unions do, and we know that our voices is so much stronger when we bring them together. The only person that showed up out of the people that are running now was Senator Bernie Sanders. He showed up at an event called Fighting Bob Fest, which was all about workers' rights. He wasn't running for anything at the time. And that was the first time I heard him talk about these ideas. And it's still been a constant message that he's talking about today. Thinks healthcare is a universal right, and how Medicare for all is going to be what's going to help everybody. Now, as a person that after I ETS from the Army with an honorable discharge, I came back, one of the first jobs I had was working with homeless veterans. And I'll never forget how, when I was wearing the uniform, people looked up to me as like I was a hero. But yet here are people sleeping under bridges that did the same thing that I did. And as far as I'm concerned, homeless and veterans should never be uttered in the same sentence. And I remember thinking about, if I didn't have this job, it could be a real possibility that I was sleeping underneath the bridge with these people. So move ahead a little bit. I went to the Army to get money to go to college. That was what I did. I signed up for some classes, but I was diagnosed with cancer during that time. Had to drop out. Didn't have insurance. Working 3 jobs, a veteran, and still not able to take care of medical bills. And one of the things that I'm proud about this movement is that Senator Sanders has taken the stigma of being somebody that doesn't have, that has not had, and raising up their voice to encourage me to run for an elected office. Because it's almost putting it on poor people that it's poor people's fault for being poor. For those of you lucky enough not to know, being poor costs an awful lot of money. It really does. But now Senator Sanders ran for president in 2016, and now depending on who you talk to, the Republicans will call me a big mouth. The Democrats say I'm outspoken on behalf of labor rights in the state. But I got a phone call. I was working on the 32nd floor on the Northwestern Mutual Tower in Milwaukee. Eating out of my lunchbox, sitting on a pallet, my phone rang. I picked it up. Hi, this is the Senator Sanders campaign for president, and we're wondering if you would like to speak at his rally in Milwaukee. I just laughed. I'm like, I'm getting punked, right? Who calls up a construction worker and asks him to speak at a presidential rally? Nobody that I knew of. After a little bit of back and forth, it turns out that they were legit. Before I got off the phone call, they asked me another question that really, really shocked me. It's like, do you know of any picket lines in your area? I was like, wait a minute. You're asking an iron worker to speak at a rally, and then this candidate running for president wants to go march on a picket line? In Wisconsin, that's a huge deal, because we didn't have a lot of electives. We had nobody that would come from out of state wanting to stand and walk with the workers. Senator Sanders did. Then when it was time, people were like, Randy, you got that big mouth, or you're outspoken. You're the guy that can take on Paul Ryan. My first response was to laugh. And it was like, you think I want any part of that? But after thinking about it, and what happened was, I was asked, finally I decided in my mind on a May Day parade, marching with tens of thousands of Latino immigrants, people standing up for their rights, DACA recipients. And I remember going to their emergency meetings after Donald Trump was elected. And they were asking, Randy, can you come to our meetings? We're terrified of this guy. So I did. I remember high school girls up on stage, tears in their eyes, talking about, I'm undocumented and I'm unafraid. And people say that, you know, an iron worker does some scary stuff. That was bravery for these young women to get up in front of people they didn't know and admit to this. So we were marching in this parade, tens of thousands strong. And I remember I was asked by a state senator, again, Randy, we really need you to run against Paul Ryan. We think you could take him out. And I looked around and I saw these faces. There weren't any tears, there weren't any sad faces. It was a look of determination because we had so many people together. And there was no way anybody was going to come and pick one of these students out and take them away from us. That was when I said yes. We ended up releasing a video that a lot of people saw. But the whole story, the whole thing, it wasn't about me because I didn't do anything special to deserve that kind of attention. It was just a working guy's voice. You know, I served my country. I made it to the middle class as a result of joining a union. And that meant everything to me. And to have somebody running for president that wanted me to speak out and talk about my story meant a lot. One of the earliest people I went to for support was Senator Sanders. Senator Sanders believed in me. He believed that a common everyday construction worker could take out somebody like Paul Ryan. I'll never forget that. This whole thing, on our election night, you know, our campaign was about repealing and replacing Paul Ryan. We got halfway there. We repealed him. We didn't replace him. But it showed what we can do when we get united, when people do believe in something. And I told people on election night, it's like, wipe those tears away from your eyes. Because we did something nobody thought we could do. We chased Paul Ryan out of office. So it's with a lot of pride I get to say, former Speaker Paul Ryan. But again, it wasn't me. We got a lot of help from Iowa. And for the people that donated from Iowa that are here, thank you very much. Thank you very much. You did it. You helped chase him away. But that's what this is about. It's not about winning or losing. It's about moving ahead and bringing everybody with you as one voice united. That's what Senator Sanders is all about. It's about a movement. I just wanted to also say that throughout this country, just seeing what's going on, and it's like you go to sleep every night and you put the bar on the ground. You don't think it can get any lower. Wake up the next morning, the first thing you do is grab a shovel because you're going to start digging. Whether you read his Twitter feed or not, just start digging. And I think by the last week, with everything going on with Iran, meant a lot to me as a veteran whose son is 13 and a half. This will be the last presidential election he won't be able to vote for. So this means a lot. This is about his future, his friend's future, and about everything that's going wrong in this country, but having the ability to fix it once we bring each other together. This kind of energy is going on throughout the entire country, here, New Hampshire, and it's really exciting to be a part of. Thank you. I see there's other great candidates here. JD Scholten in the back. We had an event earlier last year, but this is what we're talking about as far as working people that care about other working people having a voice. I hope you join me in supporting Senator Sanders as not just our next organizer-in-chief, but our commander-in-chief, because it's what we do deserve. People don't deserve just to have a voice, but we deserve to have dignity. And this is all about a movement again. Senator Sanders is the one that puts the move in the movement. Thank you all for being here tonight. Stay warm.
Thank you, Randy. And I think so far, all the candidates that have spoken so far, and I know the ones that are coming forward are really sharing the importance to get out and caucus and to make sure that we're getting out and voting and bringing your neighbors along with you. So next up is someone who is not on our program but was able to make it this evening. We have Roxanne Conlin here to speak on behalf of the Amy Klobuchar campaign. So please give a welcome to Roxanne Conlin.
Hi, Story County. I have not been here for some years. It's great to see familiar faces, and maybe I'll take it off. Can I do that? Does this work? Yeah. All right, yay. I see familiar faces. I see new faces. I see faces I love. I see faces that have been with me for all of my life in politics, and that's a really long time. I started in politics in 1960. I was 16, and John F. Kennedy was running for President of the United States of America, and I thought he should be the president. I volunteered. I did the tasks that all volunteers do, phone calls, door knocking. I put bumpers. I put stickers on bumpers at Merle Hay Mall, whether they wanted them or not. And on election day, some of you may not believe this, but people used to go to the polls without their children. So if you wanted to go to the polls, you needed a babysitter. I'm the oldest of 6 children. I am a champion babysitter, and I ran the babysitting pool. If you wanted to go vote and you had little children, you would call Democratic headquarters, and we would send someone to your house to care for your children while you voted, assuming you were going to vote right. And I am telling you, when John Kennedy became the President of the United States of America, I thought I'd done it. I thought it was me. I thought it was my babysitting pool. Oh my, I did, and I loved that feeling. I loved the idea of participating in a process that resulted in the election of John F. Kennedy. I'm so proud of all of you, of all the people in this room who have given so much to so many candidates over so many years. I went to the first precinct caucus in 1972. Some of you did too, and I have been at every single one since. And I will be at the next one 16 days from now on behalf of Amy Klobuchar. I did a lot of work before I made my choice for President of the United States of America. I looked at the websites. I met every single candidate. People can't believe that you can meet every single candidate. You all know it's true, and you probably have all done it. You can, and you should. Indeed, you must. Because it's, we have such an important role to play. Our vote counts more. It counts more because we're first. It counts more because we have a process. It counts more because we study the candidates. Have you all been studying the candidates? Of course you have. People who don't live here don't realize what Herman said is absolutely true. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. We take the obligation so seriously, don't you think? We deserve to be first by God, and we deserve to be first because we do care, because we do take it seriously, because we know what to do and we do it. And I did it. I looked at the positions, I looked at the issues they cared about, and I decided that Amy Klobuchar can win. And we have, as Democrats, a moral obligation to win in November of 2020. We simply cannot stand another 4 years of this imbecile in the White House. Well, we can't. We absolutely cannot stand it. Joe Biden says this 4 years may be looked at as an aberration, but 8 years will change our country forever. And Joe Biden is right about that. He's right about a lot of things. All the candidates, keep in mind, they're all Democrats. They all believe about the same thing. They have different ways of reaching the goals that we share. Should health care be a right? Absolutely. Should people be able to go to college and not be saddled for the rest of their lives with a bank debt at 8% interest? Absolutely. Should people have a right to a good education? Absolutely. Should voter suppression stop in this country? Should members of the LGBTQ community be absolutely entitled to the equal rights under the law? And I've done a little work in that area, as some of you may know. I tried a case this summer in Jasper County, the very first case under the Iowa Civil Rights Act on behalf of a gay man who was the Workers' Compensation Commissioner of the state of Iowa. When Terry Branstad was elected in 2010, he tried to fire him. Why? We all know why. But Chris Godfrey would not be fired. He simply would not be fired because he was serving a term of years. Nonetheless, Terry Branstad wanted him out. He wanted his own person in there. He wanted a person who would decide cases, workers' compensation cases for employers. That's what he wanted. But Chris was not about to give that to him. So what did Terry Branstad do? He cut Chris Godfrey's salary from the highest amount allowed by law to the lowest, $40,000 a year, thinking that'd persuade him to leave his job. He was wrong. He stayed there every day in his face because he cared, because he wanted workers to have their rights. And he continued until August of 2014, when, in what I believe to be an ironic thing, he became the head of the federal Workers' Compensation Bureau, making twice as much as he was making in Iowa. A jury decided that Chris Godfrey was a victim of discrimination on the basis of the fact that he was gay. They decided that was wrong, and they awarded him $1.5 million. Yay, you know. And that's what Amy believes in. Amy believes that everybody should have equal rights. She's the one who's been talking about voter suppression. She has a plan. If you have not visited her website, please do so. She lists 137 things that the President of the United States can do all by herself in the first 100 days. She lists the 111 bills that she has been responsible for passing. And through this crazy Congress, she's gotten bills passed. And not just nothing bills, not just, naming a day Rose Day, or not like that. I'm talking about bills on human trafficking, things that really matter. Why did I choose Amy? First of all, I want to see a woman president before I die, and I'm very old. Second, look at where we lost. Look at why we lost. We lost Wisconsin. We lost Michigan. We lost Pennsylvania. We almost lost Minnesota. Amy can win those states. Amy speaks that language. Amy is the person who can keep those states in the Democratic column. If we win those states, we win the nation, and we elect a new president, and we can send the other, that other guy, to the trash heap where he belongs. He should never have been elected. He never would have been elected but for a confluence of craziness. And we cannot let that happen again. And who has a role to play in that? Iowa. Iowa matters. I bet you, every one of you, are you all going to your caucuses? Yeah. Are you all taking family and friends? I urge you to look hard at Amy Klobuchar. I urge you to read what you can about her on the internet. I urge you to consider who can win, who can assure us that we do not have to spend another 4 years getting up in the morning and wondering what the hell the guy has done in the night. We can't stand it. Are we all kind of depressed? I mean, really, it's been very hard to live through this time frame, and we cannot stand to live through another 4 years. So come with me, vote for Amy Klobuchar, caucus for Amy Klobuchar, and win big with Amy Klobuchar. And I should know this myself. Amy will be, you can go meet her if you haven't met her. Ames Public Library at 1 o'clock on Monday. 1:30. 1:30, don't go at 1. 1:30 at the Ames Public Library. Go and meet her if you haven't. You will love her. She has a wonderful sense of humor. She's very down to earth. You can trust her. She'll make a good president.
All right, and thank you again to all our presidential candidates and their surrogates who have spoken this evening. If you were undecided, hopefully their words have given you a little bit more direction as to who you'd like to support for the caucuses. Before we bring up our next speaker, I'm going to go back to my things I was saying before. So, how was the snow globe feeling after a scary story? A little shaken. All right, our next speaker is JD Scholten, and JD is once again campaigning to unseat Congressman King. We certainly need someone more progressive in U.S. Congress, and I'm excited that JD is on the ticket again, so you are welcome to come on up, JD.
All right. Well, thank you so much. My one job is to tell everyone that we're going to be passing the hat right now. So while I'm speaking, if you have a few bucks, throw it in. That'd be great. I want to thank all the folks who put this on in the Story County Dems. You guys have been so wonderful to me. A huge part of the last couple of days I've been thinking about, I stopped in at London Underground recently and made me think about our very first event that we ever held. Yeah, and a few folks were there. And it just makes me appreciate how far we've come and what we were able to accomplish last cycle. For folks who might need a refresher, we were able to move the needle 24 points, which is third most in the nation. We were able to get 25,000 more votes than there are registered Democrats in the district. And the thing that I'm most proud of is in my home county, in Woodbury County, Kings never lost, and we got 54%. And we picked up right where we left off when we launched in August. And so I wanted to give more of a campaign update here rather than talk about issues and all that. So it's night and day compared to 2 years ago. One of the probably the best examples of that, and I'm not one to talk about money, but our first quarter, it was Q3 of 2017, and we raised $41,000. And it was the 41 hardest $1,000 I ever raised. This quarter, or Q3 of last year, we were able to raise $410,000. So not only did we outraise the incumbent, but we outraised the whole Republican field, all 5 of them combined, by about $75,000. This race is also probably the only race in America where the incumbent has a primary and the challenger doesn't. And my last thing about this is, for the last year, Steve King and I have had one thing in common, and it's that we both serve on the same amount of committees. I only added that because John Delaney said we should talk about that. But our campaign's not about him. It's about what we're for and what we stand for, and it's about getting out there to the people. So much of our campaign last time, and it continues this time, it doesn't matter if you're white, black, or brown, doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Independent, or Republican, we're going to come to you and try and earn your vote. And so we talk about fix, fight, and secure, fix healthcare, fight for an economy that works for everybody, and secure our democracy by cleaning up the special interests in D.C. Yeah. So we'll continue to talk about that. And right now we've taken that message and we're on our first 39 county tour where we're stopping in all 39 counties. We call it the Don't Forget About Us tour, and we're in towns of under 1,000 people. We were supposed to have one event at Town Hall in Maxwell last night, but because of the weather, I think you guys all understand. And so we'll be back for that one before too long. But these town halls have been absolutely phenomenal because it helps, one, solidify our base and meet new people and meet them where they're at. But it's also, we get to talk about issues that don't make the headlines. We got about 5 communities in this district that are about to lose or just have lost their grocery stores. And that doesn't get talked about enough. And so this is the second most agriculture producing district in America. And yet farmers right now are struggling to make a dime. We're not feeding ourselves. And what's happening here in rural America? And I know I often tend to talk more and more about the rural parts, but there's so many votes out there, I feel, so many people who are looking for solutions. And so that's a huge part of what we're out there right now trying to build, and it's just been absolutely wonderful so far. Transitioning a little bit to the caucus. The caucus is extremely important for our campaign. I don't have a horse in this race, but the one thing I've been able to do is I've worked on about 5 or 6 of these rural policies, and one of the things that I've been pushing extremely hard is we have to enforce our antitrust laws as far as it goes into agriculture. To put it bluntly, if you're for fairness, we need antitrust. If you're for allowing farmers to make a dime and stay on their farm, we need antitrust. If you're for cleaning up the environment, we need antitrust. If you're for climate change, we need antitrust. Question, how many people are going to caucus but are undecided? All right. So it's still important if you're undecided to show up, because here's the reason why. We're going to get all that data. My campaign and folks are going to get all that data, and we need to find out who our base is so we can find who the people we need to be talking to. So even if you're undecided, it's important that you show up. It's important you bring friends. So I urge you all to go caucus and bring a friend or two. Now, along with the passing of the hat, I think we're done here, but I just want to leave you with this. The best advice I got last cycle, and I know a lot of you have heard this already, but it was from a member of the Winnebago Nation who was a family friend and an activist. And he lived across the river from me in South Sioux City, Nebraska. and a gentleman named Franken, and he told me, JD, if you want change, you have to get uncomfortable. And once you get uncomfortable, you have to get others uncomfortable. And Lord knows, last cycle, the last 2 months of the campaign, we spent more nights in a Walmart parking lot than my own bed in our RV, to be clear. But that's what it took. And we still fell by 3 points. So we're going to have to work that much harder. And so I challenge you all, hey, go out and caucus, take a little bit break after the caucus, but when you're ready, my campaign is ready for you. And so with that, I just want to say, my name is JD Scholten, and I continue to stand tall for all. Thank you.
JD, thanks so much for coming out this evening. We were sorry that your event yesterday were not able to take place, but certainly Mother Nature had other thoughts for us on yesterday. JD talked about the caucuses, actually a number of the candidates have. I do want to remind everybody, when you do go to caucuses, that folks will have their nomination papers. So make sure that you look for the table and sign everybody's nomination papers so that they have an opportunity to be on the ballot. Just want to give that next reminder. Next up, we have our candidates for U.S. Senate, and our first speaker is going to be Michael Franken. So please welcome Michael Franken up.
Hello, Story County. I kind of feel like I'm home. I've been here a few times, but I always feel like I'm somewhat underperforming when I'm in Story County because I didn't go to ISU. And you need to know, I had a chance. It was within the realm of the doable, but I'm the youngest of 9. And consequently, I needed to go back home in Sioux County. So I wear my N hat just to let everybody know I actually went to Nebraska, but I'm mostly Navy, where N stands for knowledge. So just like Nebraska. So, I mean, I saved 90 minutes driving from Sioux County, rural Sioux County to I mean, I was a pragmatic young man. I was an engineer, and so the 2 schools for engineering were here, either Iowa State or Nebraska, and I could save time to go home and help my dad, so I went to Nebraska. So sorry about that, Iowa State. But you should know that Iowa State, Nebraska, all these land-grant universities here in the Midwest produce really, really great soldier citizens and also diplomats worldwide, and I know a lot of them and always proud to say that. Okay, so without further ado, what brought me here? Frankly, when the election in 2016 happened, my wife said, well, are you going back to Washington to work for this guy or not? And I said, nope. And that was the end of that. So, having worked for every president since Jimmy Carter, I wasn't working for that guy. So, I submitted my. It was that whimsical. I'm a military officer. I spent about 40 years in uniform through the years, and having worked for every president since Jimmy Carter, I wasn't going to work for that guy. So ultimately came back here. My job here is to make sure that we've got candidates that nullify the things that got Joni Ernst elected. The fact that she's rural, nearest town growing up where I was Hudson, South Dakota. And just so you know, Sioux County, this is Democrat country. They just don't know it. The biggest fundraiser I've had in the state thus far was in Sioux County. Oh yeah. The first event I went to in Sioux County, 7 people showed up, 3 of them were clergy. These are all true stories. And the next time I showed up, I gave a little spiel about, whatever, military thing, and 25 people showed up. When I announced my candidacy, there were at least 250 people in the room. So it's a logarithmic rise. Okay, so youngest of 9, Dad was a blacksmith. Mom was a one-room schoolhouse teacher. Very, very rural. I know how to make butter. And I came from a family where we only had homemade ice cream in the wintertime. Do you know why? Ice. It's the only time we had ice. Because the ice came from the inverted bird bath. That's exactly what happened. And the salt came from the water softener. So this is true. This is rural living. So Joni, I got you on the rural thing. The military thing, long service, 3 tours in legislative affairs, chief of legislative affairs for the department, the first military officer to ever work for Ted Kennedy. I was his foreign policy person and his agriculture person and his science advisor, etc. I'm a physicist by training. I believe in science. It's true. Yep. Many tours on Capitol Hill, and also 9 different jobs in Washington, D.C. over a decade, a lot of strategy, policy jobs. Lived on 4 continents, moved 28 times, typical vagabond lifestyle of a military officer. A lot of years in Africa. I mentioned Africa today, from implementing woman programs in the continent to change the dominion of women on the continent, to changing life expectancy. These are the things that the military does, and even, matter of fact, another thing, we can go talk just about Africa. Taking piracy from an all-time high to 0 in 2 years. Why? And not killing anybody. How do you do that? By understanding culture, understanding diplomacy, understanding development, and understanding human nature. That's a little sidebar. I've never said that in public before, but it's true. So after a long military career, I called it quits, and with my wife's permission, my wife of 30 years, and came back here. And my job is to ensure, as I said before, that we've got a candidate that can win. The job is to set aside Trump-era Republicans and to set about some progressive initiatives on the Hill. I have extensive experience in the authorization and also the financial aspects of putting a budget to work. And 1 more minute? Okay, thanks. And I look forward to doing that. My platform is threefold: bringing climate change and simpatico with future of agriculture in this state. This is first and foremost. This is doable. Much of this has already been said this evening, and I agree with it. From soil chemistry to the future of making Iowa the Salinas Valley for farm-to-table operations. Next is to address healthcare. I'm the beneficiary of 40 years of healthcare provided by the United States military, which ought to be from dental, preventive care, and mental care, a God-given right for every American. Absolutely. Just make it happen. We can do this. And lastly, also addressed with Big Ag and a few other things, the big divider in our society is special interest fueled by Wall Street greed. And what that does is it takes away the rungs of the ladder of success away from the youth. They're not there like they were for my family, growing up on the low fringe of the middle class, and all 9 of us going to graduate degrees and PhDs and doctors. Okay, that was available then. It's not available today. We need to work to relive that. I look forward to very much being your senator. My race is to ensure that whoever represents the Democratic Party, I would like it to be me, that person can beat Joni Ernst not by 1 point, but by at least 10. Thank you.
Michael, thank you so much for coming tonight. Our next speaker is Kimberly Graham, who's also running for U.S. Senate. So please give a welcome to Kimberly Graham.
Well, hello, Popsicle Democrats. Hello, Popsicle Democrats. Hello. Yes, that is the kind of energy that it is going to take to win this seat back for the people from Joni Ernst. We need a United States Senator who is there for the right reasons. I will tell you a little bit about who I am and why I am doing this. My name is Kimberly Graham. I'm running for United States Senate. I have a plan that has 2 parts. Part 1 is to repeal and replace Joni Ernst. Right. We can all get behind that. Part 2, become the best senator for Iowa that money can't buy. Best senator money can't buy. What do we mean by that? I mean that there is way too much big corporate money in politics, and that is the fundamental reason why we're in the mess we are in now. So until or unless we get the big money out of politics and we get people into Congress who are not going to be influenced by corporate money, things are not going to change. So we need people like me and like JD Scholten and a lot of other people into Congress, because we know what it's like to be a regular working person. We know what it's like to struggle financially, and we are going to have regular people's interests at heart, and that is what is important. So I'll tell you a little bit about why I'm doing this crazy thing. 3 reasons, basically. One is the 2016 election. Like so many people that are running for office now, I was motivated to run for office by what happened in 2016. I sat there in my jams on election night, like a lot of us, watching the returns come back and doing the math quickly and realizing at some point there was no way that Hillary was going to win, and feeling physically ill about what was about to happen in our country. And I wish I could say I was wrong about what was going to happen, but actually it's been worse than I thought it would be. Number 2 is my son. He's the other reason I'm doing this. He's 20 years old, and several months ago he said, "Mama, I think I'm going to buy some land in the north middle part of Canada." And I said, "Well, why, Max?" He said, "Because I think that's the only place we'll be able to live in 30 or 40 years. What if he's right? What if he's right? My shirt says, "Change is coming whether you like it or not." Greta Thunberg. And she's right. And she's right. We have got to take massive action on the climate crisis yesterday. And I do not hear enough people who are representing us talking about that in the emergency level way that it needs to be talked about. And the last reason is, thanks. The last reason is because of what I have done for a living for the past 20 years. So for the past 20 years, I've been an attorney for abused or neglected kids here in the state of Iowa. I'm an attorney for all the children of participants in a drug court program. And I've basically represented people who, for the most part, live in poverty in Iowa for the last 20 years. And I am tired of the lack of investment in our people. When you do not invest in people, when you invest in the top 10% of people of income and wealth in this country, and you don't invest in the majority of people, you get the kids I represent. You get the clients I represent. That is what happens when you do not invest in people. We have got to be investing in people. So those are the main reasons why I'm doing this. I don't hear, frankly, enough people in Washington, D.C. talking about children either, and that's what I've primarily done, is represent children for 20 years. Well, guess what? Children don't have money and they can't vote. They don't have money and they can't vote. Maybe that's why we're not paying enough attention to children. But I'll tell you one thing that I've learned as an attorney for kids for 20 years. When you mess up age 0 to 3, you have really messed up. Because you can create issues for people that will be with them for a lifetime, and that sometimes at best you can mitigate, but you can never cure. So we really need to, and one of my hopes as a U.S. Senator would be to have some kind of overarching legislation to support and invest in children, especially age 0 to 3, something like what Tom Harkin did with the Americans with Disabilities Act, that would forever change the way we invest in children in this country. So the other issues that we talk about in our campaign are healthcare. I see with my clients all the time that they cannot get the health care that they need, whether it's treatment for methamphetamine addiction or for opioid addiction. I used to be able to get my clients into treatment facilities for pretty much as long as they needed. Now with the privatization of Medicaid here in Iowa, I'm lucky if I can get a client into a treatment facility for 30 days, and that is basically not treatment. It's not enough to get someone clean and sober and then get them housing and get them a job and get them back on the positive trajectory that they need to be on. So again, it goes back to investing in people. I believe that ultimately we must have a universal single-payer healthcare system in this country. I understand people saying, how will we afford that? The answer is, we can afford nothing else. It is far more efficient to have a universal single-payer healthcare system than any other form of providing healthcare to your people. So that's where we have to go. That's where we have to get someday. I talked about the climate crisis. We've got to take massive action on the climate crisis immediately. And the last thing that I would want to see, again, in keeping with what I've done for 20 years, we must have a universal child care program like every other developed nation so that we have high-quality child care provided by highly trained and well-paid child care workers, preferably unionized. My dad, my mom, my stepdad, my grandfather, my son's father, and I all have been or are union workers and union organizers. So you will be hard-pressed to find somebody who is going to be more pro-union and have union and labor's back more than I will. When unions thrive, the middle class thrives, and that is always the way it has been. So for more information about our campaign, to donate, to volunteer, we are excited to have the Sunrise Movement endorsement. We have the brand new Congress endorsement. You can go to kimberlyforiowa.com, kimberlyforiowa.com, to donate, to volunteer, to find out more about our platform and our positions. But I am very excited to take on Senator Ernst. I think the day I'm on a debate stage with her is not going to be a fun day for her, but I think it will be pretty fun for me and for all of you to watch. So I look forward to that day, and I thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much.
Kimberly, thank you so much for being here this evening. Our next speaker is Eddie Mauro. Please give Eddie a warm welcome.
No, I'm here tonight because each of you deserves to know that your children, your grandchildren, America's children are going to grow up in the best possible world. My name is Eddie Mauro. I'm going to be your next United States Senator, and together we're going to send Joni Ernst squealing all the way home. And then we'll build that world. My entire life I spent in community service and organizing activism. I've been in a fight for justice on many fronts for many, many years. Starting when I was 14 years old, serving the homeless, feeding the hungry, fixing up shelters as part of the Catholic worker movement in Des Moines. As I got older, I expanded that activism. I started assisting domestic violence survivors and human trafficking survivors. Started fighting for workers' rights and farmers' rights. Became a champion for mental health. But still today, I tend to the most vulnerable people in our communities. Like Barack Obama, I became a community organizer. I'm a founding member of an organization that you all might know very well called Amos. It's done some great work in Central Iowa for over 20 years, done some great work here in Story County, done some great work right here in this church. Thank you very much. In the midst of that, I was a teacher and a coach. I built a business now that reaches into all 99 Iowa counties. I've raised a family. And now I see that I want to do even more. See, I've been seeing Iowans for a long time. They're working hard, but they're being treated unfairly. You see, when the cost of health care is soaring, prescription drugs are so expensive that our parents are taking their medications every other day, that our loved ones are sharing their insulin, that feels unfair to me. We deserve better. When I see politicians voting to take away health care from Iowans, when those politicians, they have the best health insurance in the world, health insurance that you and I pay for, that feels unfair to me, and we deserve better. When I see elected officials voting to ban a woman's right to control her own body, that'd be my mother, my wife, my daughter, the women in this room, and then they don't commit to affordable housing, to education, to health care, to economic security for families, damn, Story County, that feels unfair to me, and we deserve better. When I see our schools getting worse, our government doing little help, when we saw a Republican Congress pass a tax bill in which 83% of the benefit went to the wealthiest 1% of Americans, and then they threatened the Social Security and Medicare of the folks in this room, something you've earned and you deserve, that feels unfair to me. We deserve better. When I see our climate getting worse, threatening our homes, our farms, our communities, our very future, and the response from our Republican friends to make it easier for polluters to pollute, worrying the future for our kids, our grandkids, the future of this country. And we see gun violence reigning in this community, and hateful rhetoric coming from our leaders, and the response from folks on the other side, silence. We deserve better. And then we begin to ask, didn't we send somebody to D.C. to keep an eye on all that for us? The answer is yes. Her name is Joni Ernst. And she's been on the wrong side of all of those issues I've been listing tonight. I got to ask tonight, how many folks in this audience have served this country in the military? Please raise your hands. Can we give them a round of applause, please? My father served the country in the Navy. I had an uncle that was in Korea. He suffered PTSD before he even knew what that was. A good friend of mine was in Vietnam 50 years ago. He was in Iraq 12 years ago. I see the mental and physical scars from his service to this country. Kids I taught and coached still serve this country in the military today. I respect and honor their service. Joni Ernst also served this country in the National Guard. I respect that service. But you know what? Being a United States Senator, that requires a different kind of service, a different kind of courage. The courage to stand up to your party when your party is wrong. The courage to speak the truth, even though that might cost you a vote, maybe even your election. The courage to stand with Iowans first and foremost, even though it results in a mean tweet from a president. But instead, she's lacked that courage. In fact, she's sold you out. She hasn't been a senator from this state from the outset. She's been a senator for special interest, for big industry, for fat cats like the Koch brothers. And they do support her well. But you deserve better. We can do better. You need a senator that's going to stand for you. And I'm here tonight to tell you that's me. I'm out running around this state, almost 90 counties now, telling people I'm going to be a people's senator, fighting for the people of this state, for your families, for their health care, for their economic security, for their education, for the climate and environment that imperils them, for the promises that we've made to our kids and our grandkids, and we're failing them on today. I'm Eddie Mauro. I want to be your United States Senator. I want you to join this effort. We're going to go build a better tomorrow together, and then we're going to get this country back on track to hope and not fear, to truth and not lies, to peace and not war. You need a leader that's going to address the problems in this country with the courage, the urgency that this moment in history demands, and that is me, EddieMauro.com. Please go join this effort. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
All right, and our next speaker is Cal Woods, who is running for U.S. Senate. So, Cal, please join us up here.
Good evening. Quick show of hands. How many people made more than $1 million last year? More than $1 million? Anybody? No one? Okay. I'm in the right place. I'll get back to that in a minute. I do want to give a quick shout out and a thanks to whoever made the vegan borscht. I'd never had that before. It was wonderful. Thank you very much for that. My name is Cal Woods. Is that you? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Cal Woods. I grew up on a Lynn County hog farm. My dad was also a factory machinist at Universal Engineering in Cedar Rapids. My mom worked at the Mount Vernon Bakery. I joined the Navy at 17. Served on board the USS Chicago. I didn't spend quite as long as the Navy as our Admiral did tonight, but I nonetheless learned a lot as a 17-year-old kid. I went to school at both the University of Iowa and Iowa State, worked with Susie at the broiler years ago, And is Roxanne Conlin still here? Roxanne spoke at my high school graduation, also many, many years ago. I think she got her law degree at about 12. So I have some good roots that go back a ways here in Ames, and thank you all for the warm welcome tonight. So I'm running for the United States Senate because we have some existential challenges to deal with, some life or death challenges to deal with. We have a president with the compliance or the complicitness of the United States Senate who's not reflecting our best values. He's turned his back on some of our best allies, the Kurds in northern Syria, treated people who come to our shores, come to our borders, like criminals, taking their babies from their arms, locking them up in cages. That is not who we are. This election in 2020 is going to be a defining moment for America and for Iowa. We need to elect a president. I believe we will, who believes in justice. We need to have a United States Senate that believes in and that will fight for justice. So we have some major problems that are not beyond our will to handle if we have the political will to do that. We have a healthcare system that works extremely well for insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies. And not so well for especially the 20 million people who are uninsured or underinsured. And for the rest of us who have private health insurance, we pay about twice as much for our health insurance as folks in other Western nations. We pay about $11,000 a year. Most of the other Western nations, somewhere around $5,000 or $6,000 a year per person. Why is that? Well, because we have, most of us who have private health insurance companies have to pay for advertising, marketing, salespeople, CEO salaries. David Wickman, the CEO of United Healthcare, made $18 million last year. Compare that to the woman who oversees Medicare and Medicaid. She made $165,000 last year. You tell me where the waste, fraud, and abuse is. We can beat that system. We don't have to outlaw it. We can just outcompete them. Because if we have a public option or if we have universal health care, single payer, we don't have to pay salespeople and marketing and advertising. I had lunch the other day with a physician, a retired physician. I was naive. I was under the assumption that doctors and nurses spend most of their day taking care of patients. She told me before she retired, she spent nearly half of her day filling out paperwork to justify the charges to the insurance company. When we have universal health care, that goes away. Doctors and nurses and CNAs can spend their time taking care of patients, which is what they ought to be doing. Thank you. Okay, number two, we have a climate crisis in this country. I was down in Decatur County the other day, and I mentioned something about climate change. And a young lady, I'll never forget her, Kay Runge, interrupted me. She said, "No, Cal, it's a climate crisis." And she's absolutely right about that. Ask our friends in Australia. We've already lost 27 of our friends in Australia due to that continent being on fire. We lost 80-some of our friends in California last year. And how many people have we lost in the hurricanes? Sandy, Maria, Katrina, Andrew. Untold numbers of Americans have already been lost. And some people, our president, our United States Senator, our junior senator from Iowa, are in denial that humans are even the cause of our climate change. Which brings me to this photo. There's a few of you in the audience tonight who are old enough to remember this. It was Christmas Eve, 1968, and you youngsters have probably seen this photo before. This was Apollo 8, and their mission was to explore the moon for future moon landings, like on Apollo 11. So it was Borman, Lovell, and Anders, and Bill Anders, it was his responsibility to work the camera. And his assignment was not to photograph the Earth, but the moon. They were looking for future moon landing spots. And they came around the backside of the moon, and they saw something that no human being had ever seen before. And that's the Earth rising over the moon. It was an incredible sight. And he said to his crewmate, he had black and white film in his camera. He said, "Hey, throw me some color film." And his commander, Jim Borman, said, "Well, that's not on your shot sheet," meaning he was supposed to photograph the moon, but they had this incredible shot of the Earth. And he took this iconic photograph that we've all seen. And he said, "I wasn't a very good photographer. I was in the right place at the right time." Man, was he ever. And he said later on, our mission was to discover the moon, but the most important thing is we ended up discovering the Earth. Because nobody had ever seen the Earth. And they realized at this point, this was an iconic photo. This was an epiphany. This was a turning point. This beautiful little blue and white globe out there in the middle of hostile space is all we have. There's nothing else like it, at least not within trillions and trillions of miles. There may be other Earths out there, but they're of no practical use for us in any time in the near future. So he said, our mission was to explore the moon, and we discovered the earth. And if it wasn't for our atmosphere, which, by the way, if you could get in your car and drive straight up at highway speed, about 65 miles an hour, you'd be out of our atmosphere within an hour. That's how thin, delicate, and fragile this thing that keeps us alive is. And it's our responsibility to protect it. And our president and our United States Senator, thank you, Phyllis, our United States Senator are even in denial about what's causing that. So we have the capacity to solve that problem. At any time, the sun gives us 10,000 times the amount of energy that all the human beings on the planet are using at any one time. The solutions are out there. It's a technological challenge which we can solve, and an economic challenge which we can solve if we send the right people to Washington. And I'll just conclude with one final thought here, because Phyllis has given me the wrap-up. We deserve a United States president, and I believe we'll soon have one, who believes in and who will fight for justice. We deserve a United States Senate that believes in and that will fight for justice. And we need to send someone from Iowa to Washington who believes in and who will fight for justice. Climate justice, economic justice, and social justice. And I will. My name is Cal Woods. I thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank all of the candidates and their surrogates who came this evening. Really appreciate you coming out and coming to our event. I also want to give just a big shout out and a thank you to everyone that's come here. I think we have over 200 people that have attended tonight. So kudos to you all for coming out and supporting Democrats. I want to wish you a safe drive home. I do want to remind you that over to my left here, if you'd like some treats left, we still have some treats. If you want to take some soup home, we have some containers in the back, so please fill up a container and take some soup home. And thank you all for coming out. Remember to caucus and work for the candidate that you believe will best lead our country, because we certainly need someone better than we currently have. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah.